Hey folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and Battlefield 5 has announced the 5.2 update. This is pretty exciting. There are some very significant changes that are happening in this update, as well as some announcements regarding community games and also the lunge mine, and there's also been some announcements regarding key game mechanics that will be changing in Battlefield 5. 5.2 is probably one of the last, if not the last, update we're going to receive before the end of the year, so it's a pretty big update in the grand scheme of things. So let's dive on in. So let's start with some quick announcements. Community games / private games are coming to Battlefield 5. They'll be happening in update 5.2, but we have no word on the feature set that is going to come with this yet. So we don't know what's going to be in there. We don't know just how customizable this is going to be. So there's not really much I can say on that front, but it is nice to have, and it's going to be a huge asset going into the future. I can already picture the servers that will be running like close quarters maps, like things like the Operation Underground and some of the overhead maps like Rotterdam. I can already see servers getting rid of things like anti-material rifles and shotguns. I think it's ultimately just going to be a huge asset to the community in the future, and it's definitely something we've needed for quite a while now, so very happy to see that coming in 5.2. Now let's continue. And the lunge mine has been delayed. This is again me rolling through quick announcements, and the lunge mine has been delayed due to supposedly inconsistent splash damage. So effectively I think what happened here was that when you lunged at a tank, you actually took maybe too much damage, or maybe the tank didn't take enough damage, or maybe it was just completely random. So apparently it isn't up to their quality of life standards yet, and they don't want to put it into the game, and that makes sense. I'm happy to see that they're willing to delay certain things in order to ensure that the game is in a good and enjoyable state. Now here's where some other huge things come in, and this is stuff like TTK, this is stuff like spotting, and also player acquisitions. The only other major announcement really is Wake Island in December, but we already knew about that. So let's talk about these major changes in game. Well, there's going to be a huge time to kill rebalance. The entire game appears as though it's going to have a TTK restructure again. We don't know what this is going to look like, but it looks like it's going to take more bullets to kill regardless of what weapon you're using. They released some charts of the STG, the M1, the Thompson, and I think that was about it really. The MG42 as well was another one that featured on the chart. And ultimately, the time to kill in Battlefield 5 is going up, which means you will die slower, supposedly, and it's going to take more bullets to kill enemy opponents. Again, this is something that I'm not really sure I want to comment on. Now, the last time they did time to kill, they botched it because most of the actual balancing in the game wasn't quite there yet in order for them to do this successfully. And to some degree, I still think that is the case. But there will be a huge weapon rebalance here, and I think it's going to be across the board. I'm curious to see what the decision is behind this. I'm curious to see why they've done it, and I'm interested to hear what the philosophy behind this is. But if I were to guess, truth be told, it's probably because they're having a lot of players return to the game and are interested in attracting new ones with their brand new content. And naturally, if you have too super fast a time to kill, it might be off-putting to some new players. But again, I'm not really sure. You know, I can look at all these charts and say X, Y, and Z, but until I actually play it myself, I'll have no real way of understanding whether or not this is going to be a good update in Battlefield 5, so I'm probably just going to reserve my opinions on it. I am very precautious though, being the fact that they've done this before and completely screwed it up the last time. So hopefully the time to kill doesn't mess up too much. If they're going to do this, I personally think as well they should get rid of attrition. If they're going to change how time to kill works, we're going to need more ammunition, and quite frankly there just isn't enough of that in Battlefield 5 as it presently stands. So I'm interested to see what the plan is here with time to kill. Again, like, I don't necessarily believe it's a bad thing. I do believe Battlefield 5 does have a pretty quick time to kill that may be off-putting to some people, and as much as I sometimes prefer that, I'm willing to accept that that is the case, and I'm willing to see it change and try out. I'm happy for them to give this a go, and if it goes well, then, you know, I'm happy to stick with it. I think the reason there was so much uproar the first time round is simply because, you know, things like SMGs were quite frankly broken when they changed it, because they just hadn't balanced them in the first place. The next huge change is something called soldier acquisition icons, and this is to do with player awareness. Now effectively, when you see an enemy now or have your line of sight aimed more or less directly on them, you're going to see an icon above their head now. So a bit like when you're a sniper rifle and if you aim at them for long enough, you'll count them as spotted. This only applies to you though, there is no actual spotting itself, this is just player acquisition. It means that you individually are going to be able to see icons above enemy heads, a bit like in Modern Warfare, where if you aim at an enemy who's sat in a dark corner, you're likely going to see their name tag. I'm curious about this, I'm precautious about this. I think it's going to help. It's going to stop people camping in bushes and corners. I certainly think it's going to minimize that kind of gameplay and stop people from doing that. But I'm also actively aware that stuff like this can eventually just become Dorito filled. You know, if there's something in my field of vision, well, I'm going to shoot it and it's dead. It won't be a case of what I actually saw as an individual player. And I am worried that this might not work too well with the terrain in the game. For example, you know, if my gun is in a bush, if I'm in a bush and my gun's outside the bush, but I'm in the bush, am I going to be spotted? Will I not be spotted? It's very difficult to say. They're hoping that this is supposedly going to reduce soldiers being surprised by prone gameplay on maps, especially on busy maps like the new ones. But it's just one of those things that I'm not quite sure about. I don't know whether or not they're going to get the right ranges on this, whether or not it's actually going to affect gameplay in a positive way. It's difficult to say, but, you know, I'm willing to see how it goes. I'm willing to see if the icons work. It does, to me, in the original video that they've shown, look maybe just a little bit too generous, but of course that kind of stuff can be updated and changed accordingly. There's also been some changes to spotting, and this is probably actually one of the most requested features I've seen in Battlefield since like Battlefield 3. If you're spotted, you're going to see a flash on your map in yellow, which shows you that you are spotted and that people can see you on the map. Throwing a smoke grenade and standing within it is going to alleviate that, and there might be some other ways to alleviate it too. So to be honest with you, I think they're trying to build an ecosystem and a better environment where the game isn't, you know, constantly plagued by people proning and people camping. I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. And again, these are really changes that I feel I'm going to have to play through myself in order to understand what kind of impact they're going to have on public games. But for the most part, I can understand them. I am precautious about them, but I can understand them. And whether or not their intentions line up with what actually happens is really what counts in these situations. So that's about it so far with all the major changes. And I'll be honest with you, this is a very interesting update. I think they're trying to change stuff to make Battlefield 5 more fast-paced, try and get rid of some negative aspects of gameplay, and I understand that. I think that's great. I'm sure we're going to see a variety of bug fixes as well. But they seem to be making some real changes to internals of the game, which can always go right or wrong. And in fact, at the time of recording this video, I just went over the charts again, and I saw that the Thompson will have a 10-bullet TK at 30 meters. So if somebody is 30 meters away from you and you spray with the Thompson, it's going to take 10 bullets to kill someone. I think that's a little bit bonkers. I think this time to kill change might actually come back to bite us again. I hope that's not the case, but just looking at it is quite concerning. So just reading this, it turns out that they actually have changed some of the attrition elements, which is pretty interesting. So again, you know, I think this is quite a significant change. It seems as though ammo has been adjusted. I'm really just going to have to sit back, shut up, and wait. This is the truth, folks. I'm going to have to sit back, shut up, and wait, because I can say that maybe a certain gun having a certain time to kill feels a little bit strange, but until I've played it, I can't say a damn thing. And I guess that's just what I'm going to go with. I'm going to say that at the moment I'm a little bit skeptical, maybe a little bit negative, but ultimately I'm going to sit down and shut up until I play the thing, and then we'll talk about it then. But anywho, folks, it's been me, the Tactical Brit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in another video.